Okay, welcome to the first set of notes for Unit 3, Sensation and Perception. This video is going to talk about an introduction to both of those concepts. So let's first start out with just the idea of like this image, okay? How do we get this image into our mind? Do we actually like cut a hole into our skull, put the photo in, and then close it back up, and then it's there? Well, absolutely not. We know that. That's ridiculous. So how does it get there? And at what point do we recognize who this is, that this is Darth Vader? How does that happen? Well, we use the processes of sensation and perception. Let's talk about each separately first. Sensation is when we detect physical energy or a stimulus, okay, from our senses: taste, sight, touch. And so for this instance of the picture, we have sensed the color of the picture. That sense, that light was sent to our eyes, through our eyes, and now it was converted into neural signals. And so this is the process of sensation. We have sensed the picture. We have seen the picture. The process then goes to our brain, right? Now we are going to organize, we're going to select, we're going to interpret what that neural signal is, okay? That's perception. So our brain takes that light into our eyes, or our body takes that light into our eyes. It goes through our retinas, back to our occipital lobe, which then processes, oh, that's a picture of Darth Vader. Okay, so that's sensation and perception. We have two different processes of really analyzing stimuli. The first is bottom-up processing. What I like to think about is, first of all, our brain is on the top, right? It's below all of our other senses. Our eyes, our nose, our mouth, our ears, our hands, right? All of those things are below our brain. So our brain is the top. So if it's bottom-up processing, we are using our senses, our sense receptors, to first analyze whatever stimulus we have, okay? So we might feel something, we touch something first. Then that information goes to our brain to make sense of it. So for example, with this question here, which of the following is a picture of a dog? Well, what we're going to do first is our eyes are going to sense the three images and make out the different shapes that we have. Those shapes, that light energy, will be sent to our brain, which will then process and begin to analyze which one of these is a dog. Okay, that's bottom-up processing. Top-down processing works the other way. The brain, our mental processes work first because of our experiences and our expectations, and then we are able to really sense what we are seeing, okay, or what we are doing, what we are sensing. So in this sentence, you can read this sentence with every third letter missing because of top-down processing, because our expectations, our experiences with these words previously allows us to know what this says, okay? So that's top-down processing. Excuse me. So let's talk about thresholds. We talked about thresholds a little bit with when we talked about neurotransmission, specifically absolute threshold. But we're going to talk about it now in terms of sensation. So absolute threshold is the minimum amount of stimulus. Remember, that's the energy or the sensation that we need to detect a particular sensation. So the minimum amount of anything for us to see, for us to hear, for us to taste, okay? So it's the minimum amount of brightness that we would need to be able to detect that there's light. The minimum amount of sound for us to determine that there is sound. Okay, and we do it 50% of the time. We take that test 50% of the time because we don't always want to just rely on one chance because our absolute thresholds are so low, okay? The other threshold that we talk about is difference threshold. And this is the idea that we look at how much of a change in the stimuli do we need in order to detect that there was a change. So how much of a change in volume do we need on a song or on music to be able to tell that you turned it up or down? How much of a difference in brightness in a light bulb do we need to be able to tell that there was a change from in those two lights? Okay. We also call this the JND, or the just noticeable difference. And the JND works on Weber's law. And what that is that it's proportional, the JND is proportional to the intensity of the stimuli. So if we have really, really loud music and we turn the volume down just one notch, it's going to be pretty difficult for us to determine that there was a change. But if we have music on really, really soft and we turn it up or down one notch, you're definitely going to notice. That's Weber's law, okay? This video is really great in explaining it, and so it is in the slides that I want you to go back and watch this on your own. So let's also talk about subliminal thresholds. So subliminal thresholds are the idea that the stimuli is below your absolute threshold so that your conscious awareness doesn't pick it up. So your brain is still processing that information, but you're not consciously aware that your brain is doing that. It can happen with any of our senses. However, we think about it mostly with advertising and subliminal message that are sent through advertising. So for most people, you won't determine if a picture was flashed on the screen in the middle of one of your favorite shows. But that is a way that a lot of businesses wanted to advertise, because they would think, okay, well, if I flash it on the screen, they're going to want to buy it. They're going to think about that particular product. Well, there have been a lot of studies done, and they have found that subliminal words or messages that are flashed briefly on a screen prime us for a later response. So if you were asked a question, would you rather have a Big Mac or a Whopper, and the Big Mac is what was flashed on the screen, you're probably going to say Big Mac. But it doesn't necessarily impact you going out to buy something, because you don't really have a lot of conscious awareness of it. The subliminal threshold was also seen, Disney used it a lot, particularly in the past, but sometimes now we still use it, or we see it in terms of Easter eggs that are in movies, but things more inappropriate in the past that were seen in movies, words and sounds that you could hear that you didn't really pick up on until you actually were looking for them. Okay, signal detection theory. Simply put, it's saying that these thresholds that we've talked about are not absolute. They change. If we are expecting or motivated to find a difference or detect a stimuli, we're going to notice it more often than if we aren't expecting it, right? So let's use an example, okay? Let's talk about the idea that you just went for a job interview, and it's for like your dream job. And you left the interview, and now you're at home, and you're just waiting for that phone call back, okay? What's going to happen? You are motivated to want to feel your phone vibrate, right? That's motivation, because you're really wanting this, this job. So if you're really motivated and there actually is a stimuli, meaning your phone actually rings, you're going to detect that it's there, right? Because the stimuli is actually there. However, if you're really motivated, you might feel the stimuli or feel the phone vibrate, even though it doesn't, right? That's what the signal detection theory is saying. So this this chart kind of gives us that idea, right? So here we have the phone ringing. We did detect it. That was correct, right? We've hit. We detected a stimuli when it was there. In this case, there was no phone call, but we still detected that our phone vibrated. It was a false alarm, right? That's you pulling it out of your pocket, feeling like it vibrated, but it didn't actually. The next part, though, is that you didn't detect the stimuli. So the phone actually rang and you didn't feel it vibrate. That would be a miss, right? If the phone didn't ring and you didn't think that it was there, it's a correct rejection. So that's what signal detection theory is saying, is that this section here, whether or not you detect a stimuli, is going to increase when you're motivated. or when you are expecting something, some sort of change. Okay? Okay, let's talk about sensory adaptation. So sensory adaptation is the idea that over time, our sensitivity to stimuli diminishes if it's repeated, right? So constant stimulation. So for example, do you feel your shoes that you have on right now? What about your earrings or a necklace? Or what about your shirt collar? Do you feel those things? No, probably not, right? Because they're constantly there. That constant stimulation, that constant touch on you is there all of the time that you never feel it anymore. That adaptation goes away. Kind of like when you jump into a pool, right? It's super cold right away, but then you get used to it over time. You've adapted, your senses have adapted to that cool water.